on the stream, I think.
Especially if you get like some really geeky wines on there, because you know Robert Parker either didn't score them or scored them like a 82.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'm gonna let everyone in. Not end, start. Here they go. I remember the first time I did this and I was terrified, and now it's just like second nature. Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's daylight. It's wonderful. I wish my lighting was this good, but it's not. It's just daylight.
This is my my warm-up beverage.
Oh, I mean, that's a great one. I was looking for, I was like, maybe I have some like Alpine wine in the cellar, but I didn't. No, I did. I had Chateau Chalon, and I was like, not the day, not the time to be drinking Chateau Chalon.
I mean,
I think it's a 98 Chateau Chalon. Be like, glug, 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 glug.
I mean, there's some. I think there's still some 05 kicking around the LCBO.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not. I mean, also, I could just drink a glass and leave it on the bench for 4 years, and it still tastes delicious. So,
you get to it and you'll be like, oh, wow, this is fresh.
Yes. Actually, that was a good note. That was a good a note from Sheila that for on Saturday about the Sachet Montrachet. She's like, these are like solid wines. They're not fragile baby wines. Like, you can do whatever you want to them, and they're gonna taste. They're gonna hold their own.
Yeah, for sure.
I think Chateau Chalon is in that same camp. There's not a lot you could do to it to make it.
I mean, you've already oxidized it entirely, so
yeah,
you're pretty much fine.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, Wine Coach at Home, Alpine edition. We're trekking the mountains. I should have wore lederhosen, but I didn't. I had a big barrel of brandy on my, like a Saint Bernard, but I didn't. But thanks for coming, everyone. I'm excited for everyone to be here. There's some really cool wines, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And Alpine wines it's a strange topic. It's a strange subject of subsection of wine, but as a wine nerd, I really like Alpine wines. I like low alcohol, high acid whites and reds that are just weird and rare and funky. I was telling Sam, who's there, that you throw a weird varietal at me, and there's a good chance I'm going to buy it. But before we continue, I should introduce my co-host, Sam Mallinson. Thank you very much for returning to Wine Coach. I appreciate your time and that you can carry me through this session. Thank you very much.
And always a pleasure to join you. Thank you.
How was your day today, Sam? Did you have any fun? You drinking some Weissburgunder or?
Yeah, well, I thought it was appropriate to have a little warm-up wine, so it's
yeah, I need
it. I think there's 2 wines in the lineup from Alto Adige, or what is maybe more correctly called Südtirol. So this is Weissburgunder, aka Pinot Blanc or Pinot Bianco. So from the north of Italy, creeping past the Dolomites up into the Alps there, which is a really, really, really beautiful area that also happens to make really delicious wines.
Mm. And you get that at the LCBO. I'm pretty sure I've seen it
there. Those wines certainly have come through. It's Nicholas Pierce, I think, but this is Kelleride. You actually see we're probably going to talk about this a couple of times, but the Alps are they tend to kind of form the border of countries. So
yes.
This part of northern Italy, German is the first language. So yes. Rather than being called Cantina Bolzano, this is Kellerei or cellar in German or Austrian, I guess, same thing. Bolzen instead of Bolzano. So yeah, cool wines. And yeah, those certainly have come through the LCBO, and they're very reasonably priced. I think that sits somewhere between 18 and 22 bucks or something.
Yeah, and I love Weissburgunder, and I wish I wish I could. I had thought of pouring one because I think Pinot Bianco from Alpine regions is like solid.
Yeah, I mean, there are some people that say specifically from Südtirol or from Alto Adige that Weissburgunder is actually the best thing in the area. I don't know. I mean, I like it from there, but
down.
no,
I
people get quite excited about it.
Rachel's running a little late today, so she'll hop on, I guess, when she's around. So we'll be consistently ignoring you in the chat. No, but I won't be. But I did find a map for this session. I mean, and I found it 4 minutes ago, but it's actually a really good map. And I thought I'd share it with everyone whilst I talk about Alpine wine. So when we talk about Alpine wine, we've got Jura, we've got Alto Adige, we've got Valtellina, we've got Val d'Aoste. Like in a textbook, these regions are very far apart. They don't really, we don't often see people like creating links between them. But when you kind of look at it, as you can see, this is a map of like Europe, and you can see these are the great dark green is the Alps. You can kind of see that the Alps really don't care about borders, and they just like a slap bang in the middle of Europe. And all of these regions sort of exist on the periphery of these Alps. And when you see that, you can kind of understand where, when we taste these, that they do share commonalities and they share like cultural similarities with the food and the cuisine and what they can grow up there, because it is such a cool cold climate, and that's kind of where the biggest part of Alpine wines is the climate. It is high elevation where it's really cold, and you have to find grapes that can survive that. So you got Jura. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but there's Jura to the left, down the bottom near Milan. There's directly above it is Valtellina. To the left of it is Val d'Aoste, and then sort of, where the north of the Adriatic, you get Alto Adige, South Tyrol. But you can sort of see where there's, we don't see a lot of Swiss wines, but Swiss wines tend to be Alpine in nature. Also, we don't see a lot of Liechtenstein. Have you ever had a Liechtenstein wine? I guess they make wine. I assume that they do.
I would imagine. Yeah, I haven't. I mean, in that it's such a small country. But I mean, to your point on Swiss wines, we see so few Swiss wines. I mean, one, production size isn't huge, and then they generally start at a elevated price point, right? Where, okay, you don't have to spend $100 to get Swiss wine, but I mean, you're not finding Swiss wine for sub $20 probably, right? It's all kind of 20 and above. So
I think the only Swiss wine I ever found at the LCBO was like for making fondue. Like it was Chasselas that was just,
like they have fondue on the label, just so
fondue on the label. Like not perfect for fondue. It's like okay. Which after learning a lot about sake, I'm not super mad at like suggesting like you add like a wine is okay in food. Like you're allowed to do that kind of stuff and not feel so like it's sacrilegious, but it's funny.
And I saw a great comment here about how everything in Switzerland is expensive, and I can confirm. In the very brief time I was there, it's wild. Like you pay €7 for a bottle of water at a gas station.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you don't pay euros; you pay Swiss francs. We all should know that. Come on. No, I do remember going to Switzerland with Pete like 10 years ago, and it was like Melbourne prices for wine. And I'm drinking like French wine. I'm like, why am I paying like €60 for this bottle of wine? I was like, this makes no sense to me. But delicious. We should all go there.
And beautiful. I mean, there's nothing more beautiful than drinking wine and looking at vineyards that are, in the foothills of the Alps. This is special.
And it's just chilly. I like environments that are just chilly. You just put a coat and a scarf and toque, and you're
That's
like,
why you moved to Canada, Nick.
and that's literally why I moved to Canada. Canada definitely doesn't. Yep, Canada may tell you about the winters, but they definitely don't tell you about the summers. I'll tell you that much. That was the biggest surprise when I moved. I was like, why is it so hot and humid here? It's a terrible place.
This is going to be a huge national housing crisis. All the igloos are going to melt. What are people going to do?
Anyway, we're not here to talk about Canadian wine because if we were, no one would buy a ticket. So and not because I wouldn't want to do it, but because no one wants to drink Canadian wine. How many times I do a private tasting, and they're like, I'm happy with whatever, but just no Canadian wine. I'm like, okay, fine. I mean, your money, but I get really sad about it. Let's taste some wine. We're going to Jura first. And who's excited? Jura is like the cultiest of, like, when you talk about French cult wines, like most of them live in the Jura. You know, Ganavat.
It's hipster catnip, right? Like, as far as like kind of geeky, weird, off the beaten path wines go, I mean, Jura really, the last 10 years has taken off. And to be fair, in part for really good reason, because there's some incredible wines. I mean, wine number one's a pretty good example of it. Where you're like, all right, it's a little bit weird if you're not used to drinking this style of wine, but holy shit, is it complex and delicious.
Yeah. This is great. I've had this in Mags for a couple of years, and I never sold one, obviously. But I was like, you know what? Let's do a tasting and let's pour these wines out. Because for someone who, if anyone, Jura fans, anyone who loves Jura, they love this oxidation, this oxidative winemaking that creates these like cherry-like notes, I guess, for lack of, to be reductive. And the way it happens, if for people who don't know, is that their barrels, they let a layer of floor develop, which is kind of like a material mat that floats on the top, and it kind of creates its oxidation kind of thing. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, but like ones like these, there's not a lot of ripeness. It's a region that struggles to ripen grapes and develop flavor. So they use winemaking to develop complexity, to develop ways to like add flavor to the wine. Plus, that ones like this are super age-worthy. I mean, they're literally timeless. You could just...
Yeah. I think, so this is the 14 Champ de Vin, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Pollux. So I think this is half and half Chardonnay and Sauvignon.
Yeah.
So the two prestige white grapes of Jura, I would say. And yeah, to your point, Nick, I think it spends 3 years under voile or floor or whatever you want to call it, which is really neat because that, like, you get the extra complexity and flavor from all of that kind of yeast strain that sits on top, but also the kind of slow oxidation notes. And I've seen like peaty Scotch and stuff in the comments, but it does have this like oxidative walnutty thing, but it also has this kind of almost iodine-y curry leaf kind of weird thing to it that I find really captivating. But I don't know. I mean, I think if someone said, "Oh, I love white wine," and you threw this in someone's glass right away, they'd probably be a little bit shocked. But if someone came in asking for Jura, or if someone said, "I like sherry," or "Oh, I like funky oxidative wines," this is great, and this would slay with food.
Oh, so good. And this is a very, I guess, traditional style. You don't necessarily find it in all Jura wines. You kind of have to ask the question. You have to go, well, is this like oxidative style? Or, you can get really fresh, mineral, clean driven wines, like, or you can just get really regular winemaking, like Domaine de Pelican, is a Burgundian producer. Well, Marquis de Dongeville is a Burgundy producer who has this domain in the Jura, and he makes very classic-ish wines, for lack of a better word, that have a very Burgundian charm to it. So Jura has a big spectrum, and this is a really iconic style, and I mean I super like it. I like it because it is sherry-like, but without like the bite of sherry, and I don't know, it just
And
really nicely on my palate.
yeah, less alcohol, more acid, which is nice. I think the extra acid makes it so friendly. Like I still think one of the best things you can possibly have is a wine that's in this more oxidative style, whether that's true Vin Jaune or if it's something a bit more like this, with walnuts and Comté, right? Probably the most famous cheese from the Jura. Or what's super classic there is like chicken and morels in like a cream sauce with Vin Jaune in it. And that sounds so good. So good.
Danielle was asking, how does this compare to Vin Jaune? And I think Vin Jaune has much more intensity, and I think much more dry palate, like super, for me, very like textural. This has a little bit more like a white wine kind of feel. Not that Vin Jaune isn't.
I mean, especially on the palate, there's still like some kind of like ripe fruit and presence of freshness here. Whereas for me in Vin Jaune, a lot of the time, like the fruit is nearly out of the pitcher. It's like dried apple skin or something, but it's really much more on the oxidative side. And this, like, it still has that kind of like ripe Chardonnay fruit mid palate. Like it still has that kind of apple, pear, lemon kind of middle palate.
Yeah, this is a really and Champ de Vin is a really cool winemaking husband and wife team. They were like soil scientists and like oenologists who sort of traveled the world, especially in Africa, doing lots of work in soil rehabilitation. And then went to the Loire Valley and worked in there, like again, revigorating soil, became very much in the biodynamic, and this is a biodynamic wine, so very much in that sort of philosophy of winemaking. And then they bought a small parcel in the Jura and sort of started making wines. This is great as a really great example of biodynamic wine in that, it's sort of low intervention and natural in a lot of ways, but without, it has sulfur, it has the, the winemaking that doesn't make it go too natty and mousy, which is really great. So, I really like these. I like their story. I like the fact that they've sort of worked a lot to make the world a bit more better. And winemaking is kind of their passion, and I like that as well. I'm happy to support them. And we see a lot of their Cremant on the market. That's probably the most popular wine that Mariko and Kieran sell. And it's super delicious. And if you haven't had Cremant de Jura, like for me, it's the closest to champagne that, like in terms of flavor and complexity, that you'll find. And it's a no-brainer. Absolutely no-brainer. At half the price, quarter of the price.
Yeah, depending on what you're getting, for sure. Absolutely. Super, super, super delicious stuff. I'm curious to know, like, the people that are tuning in have like, they've thrown out some great descriptors for aromatics and flavor profile, but I'm actually curious, like, how many people tuning in tonight would actually like pour themselves another glass of this if they had a bottle next to them, or if you think this is more just kind of like an interesting oddity for learning. Because I could, you said you have mags of it, Nick, like I'll bring a wheel of Comté and we can, sit 10 feet apart in the park and
10 feet? Yeah, it's up there. Like 14 meters. No, absolutely. I'm 100% to do that, because a wheel of Comté is probably 15 times more expensive. So
yeah, especially
you bring the Comté, and I will bring one magnum of oxidative.
Well, you know I won't bring that 6-month stuff. I'll bring the 24-month. Like, I won't play around if we're getting Comté.
The one actually, I have a really cool story. I think Jean Bordy, he's a really classic producer, Jurin producer. Actually, Toronto maybe 3 years ago. He came to Peter Pan. I did a tasting with him, and he was like, "Yeah, every July, we have cellars going back 300 years, and every July we go through one section of the cellar and recork everything." I'm like, "I'll come and do that for you." He's like, "Yeah, absolutely. If you uh, ever want to come to Jura and like recork wine," which, I mean, sure, would be really boring, and like I would still get over it. But for like the first 2 days, it would be super fun. But the wines are so old and their cellar is so deep that they have to like, you know, recork wine that is 300 years old.
Oh, Nick, one thing I just thought of too for those who are keen to explore Jura more on their own, you'll sometimes see on labels, they'll let you know if it's made in an oxidative kind of style like this, where it's under the veil, or if not. And I think this bottle of wine actually says sous voile on the label, like under veil, under that yeast cap.
I'm going to find the term.
No, you usually see houillé. So houillé is topped up, and then non-houillé is not topped up. So if you see houillé, it typically means it's going to be like a protected wine, like we would expect to see in other regions. And then if you see non-houillé, like Domaine de Pélican that you were talking about earlier, that's what they use. They use those terms, so houillé and non-houillé. So if you want the oxidative stuff, get the non-houillé. If you want the protected type, get the houillé or the topped up.
I have a. It's funny, like we could literally. I mean, we could talk about the Jura for like literally hours. And I definitely want to do a solo Jura wine coach. But you're right, like there's a lot to understand because there's that spectrum and then there's this deep history. Before we move on, my only other fun fact is that the word Jurassic, like Jurassic Park, comes from the Jura region, is because that was where they first found the fossils of that time period. So if you ever can't remember Jura, remember Jurassic Park and go, "Oh, that's the one I really liked." And that's my fun fact. Let's drink wine number 2 because we've got 4 more to go and we've got 35 minutes. So I can't do math, but that's so good.
Off we go.
Oh, I love this one. I remember. I'm going to put it in the class. I'm going to put it in the list. I remember. I think I was with you in Italy in 2019.
I was going to say.
And we went to their stall and we tasted some wines, or we didn't taste them. I can't remember. But.
Yeah, I know. We went to the kiosk for Abbadia di Novicella or whatever, Abbazia, and we tasted through. You actually might have been wearing that fabulous spring jacket as well.
I bought this because I was going to Italy, because I was like, this is like loud and Italian, but also like light and like easy and very Italian, But,
and I have to say, being in a massive convention like Vin Italy, the largest wine fair in the world, Nick having a mustard colored jacket on and being 6'4" made him easy to spot. So that was nice if you lost him in the crowd.
I don't think I was like a lost little kitten. If it wasn't for you and Emily and Doug to like lead me around to like all the appointments that you'd all made, I would have been like too scared to talk to anyone. But it was such a great time. If you're ever in Verona during Vin Italy in April, May, go. It's the best wine experience you'll ever do in your life. And it's like open to the public. You just walk around these city churches, like convention halls the size of a city block, but there's 13 of them, and essentially every hall is a different province of Italy, and you just all the winemakers are there tasting their wines, and I just felt sorry for those people who were like having to polish all that glassware. It was just so much glassware. Anyway, we're in Alto Adige, northern Italy, kind of on the border of, well, we'll go back to the map, because let's be precise. Kind of on the border of, Austria and Italy. And this is kind of, this is Sauvignon Blanc. And this could kind of sound really strange, like, oh, Sauvignon Blanc from Italy. But north, when you get into Austria, you're in Steiermark, which is famous for its Sauvignon Blanc, and you go to Alto Adige, which is also really famous for this expression of Sauvignon Blanc, which is, I really enjoy. It is distinctly Sauvignon Blanc, but it also has this really great freshness and like this, what I call mountain air. It's like this quality that like clarifies, the senses. It's such a wonderful wine.
Yeah,
yeah, we should.
Cool place. I mean, if you're not familiar with this producer, maybe you can just look it up on your own, because it's in a monastery that's in the mountains essentially, and I think they've been making wine there since the 1100s.
1100s, yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, it's this beautiful monastic property. They've got vines there. On these terraced steep hillsides, and it is really interesting. I mean, if you are lucky enough to go there and to visit this region, we always refer to it as Alto Adige, or the Upper Adige River here. But once you get to Bolzano and then north of that, make sure that you are a good person and you call it Südtirol, or Southern Tyrol, and you can see the province right north in Austria is Tyrol. So it's the southern part. This part of Italy was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So really until World War I ended, this was Austrian. So people, the first language they speak is German. You eat sausages and sauerkraut and pretzels, and there's great beer. And
keep talking. I absolutely want that for dinner.
Oh, and it's like, it's so nice up there. And actually, I think the special thing, and we saw it a little bit with wine number one, we're seeing it a bit more with this wine too, that you get in that Alpine is you have tons of sunshine and actually really quite warm days, because you're kind of like sitting in a bowl of like mountains refracting the heat and trapping it, but then like really quite cold nights because of the elevation. So it's kind of weird. You get this like amazing acidity and delicacy, but you also get a depth of fruit and aromatics that you maybe wouldn't expect from a climate that cool. And it's crazy because in July it could be 35 degrees Celsius in Bolzano, and you're like, wow, how is it 35? But then the sun sets and it might be, 15. So pretty special place, and I only got to spend a couple of days there, but I would go back in a heartbeat. I'd honestly go anywhere, to be honest.
Oh,
COVID
at
thing
this point,
crushing me.
At this point, yeah, absolutely. Carrie and Bridget were mentioning pine resin, and I think that's a really good note. And in Italy, they kind of use the word balsamic to describe these kind of notes, and balsamic not in the vinegar sense, but balsamic as in pine, and like
it's like the idea like balsa fir kind of.
Yeah, and it's this pines, like piney herbal essence that you see a lot in northern Italy and like northern Italian wines. You get this herbal piney kind of thing, and I really like this as an expression of Sauvignon Blanc, where instead of having this like passion fruit if you're in New Zealand, or like this, intense like green jalapeno kind of thing. Instead it sort of, or even if you're in like, Sancerre in the Loire Valley, where you get this like, it's a lot more lighter green. This kind of has a lot of intensity, but it's more herbal and like a bit more like, aromatic and balsamic rather than like green and like tropical or whatever, that sort of more what we think Sauvignon Blanc is. And you kind of see that in Austria as well. When you go to Südsteiermark, you have these really much very similar flavor profiles. And if this is something that you like, go, Alto Adige Sauvignon Blanc is a really it's relatively common. You could be able to find it. And if not, Sauvignon Blanc from Austria is probably going to have a really similar expression. But it's a really great way to drink Sauvignon Blanc. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's cool. Like it has that, like, herbal is the best thing. It has that like almost kind of Thai basil meets grapefruit and white peach. I think it's really pretty. Yeah, it's, I mean, a super smart wine. One last thing on Alto Adige or Südtirol there, Nick. I think you held up the bottle and it actually says the grape variety on the label, right?
Right.
Same like this wine, it says Weissburgunder instead of saying Pinot Bianco, which it says underneath. A very Germanic thing to label by grape variety, right? I mean, usually when you look at Italian wine, you see, oh, I'm drinking, Prosecco, or I'm drinking Barolo or Aglianico or whatever. I mean, actually, you see Taurasi, you don't see Aglianico, right? You see the region, but once you get up here, you start to get a bit more like what you expect in the Teutonic wine regions, right?
Yeah.
Labeling Kerner, Sauvignon Blanc, Riesling, Müller-Thurgau, whatever.
If you need me to repeat or type them, the litany of crazy grape varietals that Sam just recited, it's amazing. But you can get that kind of level, definitely make Weissburgunder, definitely make Pinot Grigio. 100% I've had.
They make Kerner and Müller-Thurgau.
I've had magnums of the Kerner. I think the one time you worked on Wine Wednesday at Peter Pan, you sold the mag of this Kerner. I remember this very distinctly. And I'm getting some Gruner Veltliner that they make next month. So I'm really excited. I really like this producer. It's a really solid producer. That kind of typifies Südtirol or Alto Adige like winemaking. And it's a really cool region if you kind of like these fresher styles, even in the reds. Like, it's such a great wine region to explore. It's really not hard. Like the Pinot Grigio from Alto Adige is like such a wonderful expression. It's like a really pure, delicious form. That's not like Pinot Grigio the way we think about it.
Yeah.
I'm almost tempted to put, if I was ever to put a Pinot Grigio on in the wine shop or on the list, it would always be from Alto Adige or Friuli, like these classic regions that make.
Yeah, and look, if you're a white wine drinker, I think exploring the northern part of Italy, the north and the northeast especially, there's a lot of great wines that are under the radar there, right? Because in Italy, everyone's drinking red wines. I mean, actually, in northern Italy, everyone's drinking sparkling wine. But I mean, like, we think of Italy very much like I think of Spain, right? Where you're thinking of like red wines. And some of those whites fly under the radar, and they can be really good.
Yeah, and I think, my suggestion, as we approach summer, when you start buying and choosing like white wines to drink, there is a lot of cool regions out there, and I can pretty much assure you, unless it's Californian, that it's gonna, like, the style around the world is these fresh, elevated acidity, lighter and like less bold style. Like, this is a good time to experiment and find white wines from different regions and just explore, because it is a kind of a global trend to have dry, like fresher style of wines. And you see it sort of interpreted in Spain, in Portugal, Chile, everywhere. You can kind of get some really cool examples. But let's continue in Alto Adige / Südtirol, and we're going to a red wine. So wine number 3 is a super, like, this kind of is only grown in Alto Adige and like, these kind of regions, in Alpine regions. Lagrein. When you go to Wikipedia and you go Lagrein, it just, the in brackets, the pronunciation is just Lagrein, Lagrein, Lagreen, or whatever you want to call it. Like, there's no correct pronunciation. It's just whatever you want to call it. Like, say how you feel. I like this one a lot. It was described to me as like, it's inky, dark Beaujolais, but it's kind of like Syrah and Beaujolais had like some kind of like these Beaujolais and Syrah are like right next to each other, so it's not like there is space to have like an intermediate region, but this is kind of where that intermediate region is. It's
Yeah, I mean,
love this one so much.
it has a bit of all of that. It even has like almost something that's a little bit, and I guess this doesn't make, I mean, it's not that far away, but like
Only $38. Wonderful.
how much?
$38.
And is this listed? What's the appellation officially?
Alto Adige.
Oh, so it's Alto Adige. Okay.
COC.
Yeah.
So the producer is Gerland, Calorai / Cantina / Weingut, whatever you want. Who cares at this point? But yeah, and again, it's a great, when we get into these red wines, we're going to see like, this is 13%. Like, this isn't, you would struggle to find any red winemaker who wants to go with, who wants to make a wine that's like 13%. They would be like, that's too low. It's not, no one wants 13 low alcohol red wine, but I really like this. I don't know tell me what you think in the chat. But
yeah, I also find it not unlike some Austrian reds, right?
I know it's kind of fun exploring this like weird, like gray zone of wines, and you can see, Beaujolais is right near the Alps, and you can go with Zweigart, and you can go with Lagrein or Syrah, Dornfelder, all these like dark, inky varietals that have this kind of like peppery, fruity charm. That's so good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun region because, again, if you're looking at Trentino, which is just south of Alto Adige, and then Alto Adige, I mean, between Lagrein and Schiava and Tirol de Go, I mean, I don't know if you've ever done any of Elisabetta's wines on a wine coach.
I haven't. I haven't stocked her wines for years and years. I have some in my personal cellar.
Yeah.
But Tirol de Go is a great wine, and they're all related. Like, if you have the big wine grapes book, I'll bring it. I'll show it next week on camera. It's packed away, but it like they're all related to one another. Like Gamay, Syrah.
I think Tirol de Go is a parent of Lagrein, and Lagrein and Syrah are related somehow. So, I mean, the puzzle all kind of fits together a little bit for sure. But I mean, this is a really quaffable wine to me. Like, while it's a great variety a lot of people wouldn't have heard of, and maybe even a region that a lot of people don't drink of, there's nothing immediately challenging or confronting or scary about this wine.
No, absolutely.
Right? Like, it tastes like what I want Merlot to taste like. I mean, Merlot is usually too ripe and too alcoholic and too oaky. And it's really nice to see something like, I don't know the winemaking in this, Nick, but there doesn't seem to be any influence of oak on it at all.
No, I didn't get that either. Like, I think this is like Beaujolais kind of feel good wine. I think it's just wonderful. I was looking up another grape that I remember tasting recently. It's very reminiscent of the grape. I'm going to look it up, but I just like this wine so much. I have a little distrust with like Alpine wines or like cool climate wines, because there are some winemakers tend to use new oak on them in order to like bulk them up and give them a bit of respectability, as they sort of believe. But I really like that there's no new oak on this, because I think there is old. It is aged in old barrels in order to round it out, but it is mainly stainless steel and some old oak that doesn't impart any flavor. But I really like this because it has that, like, it's just charming and delicious. And
the other thing I'll say is Guerlain is a cooperative, and I think we're probably past this now, but for a long time, cooperatives, when it came to wine, weren't seen as quality focused, right? It was kind of just like, oh, they buy grapes from everyone and then they just make a couple of wines and they're not particularly good because they don't have control over the vineyards. But in the Alps, where grape growing is very difficult and labor intensive, and plots are small, cooperatives are super common. I actually think Abbazia di Novicella even buys grapes from around. And the thing is you start to see the Germanic influence come through, because people are very, it's all about quality. It's all about by the book. Let's do this and do this correctly. And so don't be scared off of cooperatives in the Alps, especially because oftentimes cooperatives have really high quality wines. Yes, they work with a bunch of growers, but I mean, they compensate the growers correctly. And if the fruit's better, then they go into the higher quality level of wines, and the growers get compensated more. So yeah, there's
in those small regions, that's kind of like these small growers. There aren't established wine, like, winemakers that like invest in that region, and cooperatives are kind of the way they can sell and make wine. Otherwise it doesn't, like, and the next wine we go to in Val d'Aoste is like iconic for their cooperatives, right?
Yeah. All that to say, don't let the idea of a cooperative scare you off, because when you look at Austria and Northern Italy, you look at a lot of the Alpine areas, cooperatives are making some of the very best wines. So
yeah, and I think, I know that's a whole other subject, like the way winemaking is, the business of winemaking is sort of run. And, cooperatives, I think the days of like meant inferior quality are long gone. I think there's no winemaker or wine grower in the world that isn't like aware of the quality that people expect in wine, and the modern winemaking. So, you can be rest assured, unless, you're in some kind of village in, rural Italy, and you see like a wine on a shelf. I mean, I'm creating this picture that I have no idea where I'm going with this, but the point is that, you can be pretty sure that you're going to get a good bottle of wine, especially if it's in Ontario, unless it's like E.G. Gallo and but that's a whole other story.
Honestly, there is no better time for quality in wine across the board. Like the base level of wine quality is higher now than it's ever been. So, I mean, to your point, Nick, I've been in Italy and drank cold wine from a beer tap at some shitty trattoria, and it was great because it was just cheap, honest, well-made wine, and it wasn't super complex and life-changing, but it was fairly priced, and it came in a large vessel, so it worked.
Always buy the house wine, especially if in Europe. Just buy the house wine.
Get a liter
for lunch.
Yeah,
and then always go to a restaurant that has a really good wine list, and like dive deep into their cellar. Get the all the old vintages and 10, 15-year-old wines that you'll never find in Ontario. You only have so many dinners when you're visiting Europe So like spend it drinking old, delicious, cheap wine.
Yeah.
I think it's mostly cheap, I guess. It's cheap. Or like rare wine. And then house wine is for breakfast. It's easy peasy.
That's it.
Wine number 4. I have like this addiction to Val d'Ost wines. I'm gonna put the map up again. It is like just, and this is why, So I remember going to Bruce Wallner's wine class many, many years ago.
Happy birthday, Bruce, by the way.
Happy birthday, Bruce. You're 50 today. Full stop. No, I love Bruce. But I remember him saying, "Oh, the Val d'Ost is a region of self-exploration." Is usually his terminology. And so, when anyone says this region isn't worth teaching, because it's not that it's not important, but like the scope of Italian wine is so large that you have to pair off some like wine regions, because it's just like it's not worth spending a day on, because there's 20 other regions that you have to explore. But that was the first time it piqued my interest. And so this is, I showed a screen, I didn't explain it. So Val d'Ost is above Piedmont, sort of right here. What's the river called in here?
The Aosta.
The Osta River, obviously. But it is like super mountainous, the smallest production in terms of wine in every province of Italy. And it's mountainous. They make Nebbiolo, they make weird French varietals. It's just this really cool amalgam of like mountain, but like French culture and Italian culture sort of merging into one. And they're like this resilient wine region that makes resilient wines that always are in the conversation, but like never like spotlighted. So this is
tiny production. And I mean, the other thing is, from a wine law standpoint, there's no DOCGs in Val d'Aosta, right? So it's maybe overlooked, but an area I'm dying to go to, quite high elevation, like typically around it's not weird to be 3,000-4,000 feet above sea level, no problem. So this is the Fumin.
And the producer is Institute Agricole Regionale, which is kind of, and this is kind of more French, like it's Italian and French and then English. Well, it's not even English, but they're like a nursery / agricultural school / kind of like educational body that have done a lot to like preserve these varietals, because there are some really cool varietals in the Val d'Ost, like Fumin, like Coralin, that are rare and threatening to be extinct. Prier Blanc, I think, is one of them. And these people, this organization does a lot to preserve these vines and make sure that that when the winemakers and the wine growers kind of can't sustain it anymore, at least there's this library of like vines to like showcase the history and like preserve that kind of history of winemaking, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, doing some really great stuff. I mean, there's an indigenous grape to Val d'Aosta called Vouillermine, and I think there's about 2.2 hectares left of it in the entire world. And the Institute has probably about half of that. And it's kind of interesting, because when you start learning about wine, people say, oh, well, you know what? Grape varieties die off because they're just not that good. They didn't make good wines, so that's why they weren't replanted. Especially when you're talking about growing in difficult to grow regions like Val d'Aosta. Maybe it's just a grapevine that's not particularly winter hardy. Maybe it's a grape variety that has a bunch of disease pressures, or doesn't deal well with pests or insects, and therefore it's a lot more work and time to get not much out of it. And I think that's the beauty about having something like the Institute is, even if the grape vine is a pain in the ass to farm and doesn't give you much fruit, they're going to do it just to kind of preserve the local culture and the history. And I don't think that's something to dismiss, because the more great indigenous grape varieties we have, the more interesting the world of wine is.
And I think that's a really good point you've touched upon, is that, like, especially in Alpine regions, the production is so low and they're not like super popular. Like, they're not super well-known regions, but this is where you really sort of you see the people behind, you see the people's lives that are associated with this wine, like wine growing region. Like, you think Burgundy, there's like a ton of producers, Bordeaux, Loire Valley, but when you go to Val d'Aoste, there's just a handful of growers, there's a handful of winemakers, and you really understand how important it is that, like, how our wine buying and what we buy really affects their life and their future. Like, and I think we often, obviously we love Burgundy, we love all these like large wine growing regions, but buying these wines, Alto Adige, going to the Jura, Val d'Aoste, these are the regions that, I don't know, I feel like they're so much more enthusiastic about your patronage, or that fact that I put, when we were in Italy again, we went to Grosjean and we went up to them and they were so excited that, like, some Canadians were like excited about their wines. Like, for them, it's not mind blowing, but it is such they feel the honor of that. And, I really appreciate that kind of level of, support I can lend small wine growers and small wine growing regions, because for them, it is a big difference whether I buy their wine or not, or what I say about in a forum like this, to 25 people about their region. So,
and I mean, Italy is one of those places where, I mean, the country is so fiercely regionally proud. If you're in Piemonte, you drink Piemonte wines, you eat Piemonte produce and other products, right? You don't say like, oh God, which part of the world are we going to drink from tonight? Like we do here. And unfortunately, not that many people live in Val d'Aosta, and not that much production is there. So there's not really that many people to sit there and champion the wines. But if you go out of your way a little bit and you can track them down, they're worth looking at, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm happy that we're not tasting Cabernet Sauvignon from Val d'Aosta. I'm happy that we're tasting Fumin.
110%. And that is a really big temptation of these small wine growing regions. Like, we've seen it time and time again, especially the New World.
Absolutely. Well, they know that, even if no one knows the region or where we are or whatever, if I put Chardonnay or Cabernet Sauvignon on the label, or Sauvignon Blanc, people will recognize that and people will buy it. It's kind of the gateway drug to try. A lot of countries have done this: Greek wines, Portuguese wines, Croatian wines, whatever. And I'm really thankful that, I think by virtue of being a little bit tucked out of the way because they're up in the Alps, whether it's the Jura or Val d'Aosta or Sud Tyrol, a lot of these regions have been able to keep some of their local grape varieties and local traditions alive, because they are kind of a bit removed. And luckily enough, we get to be the people that benefit from it.
Yeah. And if there are any like Soms in the audience, or like young Soms, like, these are the regions that, like, our passion for them is like where we'll read 10 and 15 years down the track, oh, this region was in the decline, but thanks to worldwide interest, their vineyards began to expand. And, that's kind of like the power of these wines, and, these kind of tastings. And it's not, in Burgundy, your bottle is a drop in the ocean, and but here it's such a small production, and at the end of the day, they can't charge like this Fumin is like absolutely under $50. Like they can't charge $70 for this wine, and you're getting great winemaking at a really great price. Unlike wine number 5, which is ridiculously expensive, and I should never have put this on, but I love this wine so much, and I was like, I'm sure Valtellina somewhere is like Alpine wine. It's not in traditional sense. I mean, it is in a traditional sense, but it's not like anyway.
Well, as I finish up this Fumin, I mean, the wine we're about to taste is. Forget it as being one of the best producers of red wine in Lombardy or Lombardia. It is legitimately one of the best Nebbiolo-based wines in Italy.
And this is like top cuvee. This is like great wine.
I thought you were pouring the Stella, the like Cicella, but they're entry level Cicella.
No. Rocco Rosé, Red Rocks. This is like $200 a bottle, but super great. And in 2013, it's just such a good wine. Arpepe is if you see this, just buy it. I mean, not this wine, but any Arpepe wines. I really like. I mean, I'm a Barolo fan, and I love Nebbiolo, but I love examples of like more like Valtellina, like Alto Piedmont, like these like examples of Nebbiolo that are a bit more higher in elevation, a little less rich, but a little bit more like constrained and like sort of drink more like a Pinot Noir rather than like a Nebbiolo or a big bold Nebbiolo. And this for me, Arpepe is like, it's my favorite Valtellina wine. And Valtellina is, when I retire to Italy and have a little shack or chateau or whatever in the hills, depending on how successful I am as a sommelier, Valtellina is exactly where I'm going. Like there's no doubt about it. 100% I'm going to Valtellina on the foothills of the Alps, drinking fucking Arpepe, and living my best life. But I think the first time I had this wine was at Montecito with you, Sam. Like not this wine, but one of his wines.
All right, Arpepe, yeah.
Yeah,
it's very possible. Yeah, I mean, I love these wines, and I don't know. I think if you love wine, you probably love Nebbiolo, and if you don't, try harder. I don't understand what the problem is.
There is 100% Nebbiolo fanatics who I've known for years who have always asked me, let's do Nebbiolo, let's do Nebbiolo, let's do Nebbiolo. So
it's so in Lombardia, in Valtellina, where this wine comes from, they tend to call it by its local name of Chiavenasca.
Chiavenasca. Because that's an actually important little fun fact.
Yeah, so you might look at it every once in a while, and you'll see different synonyms for synonyms for Nebbiolo. You'll see Chiavenasca. You'll see sometimes Spana. So in Lombardia, you'll see Chiavenasca in Alto Piemonte, or the northern part. Like once you get above Barolo and Barbaresco up into Carema, Bocca, Lessona, they'll start to call it Spana. But I'm actually with Nick here. Like I love Nebbiolo, but sometimes when you get Barolo, it's 14.5% alcohol, and it's really tannic. And when you go a little bit further towards the mountains, you get a bit more elevation. You end up with something at 13% alcohol or 13.5. You get that like super pretty lifted high tone floral aromatics. And you get slightly softer tannins, a bit more kind of drinkability, if you will, without losing any of that kind of pretty.
Where you describe it, I'm going to share a picture of the vineyards of Valtellina from Wikipedia. I mean,
Yeah.
How do you not want to live? How do you not want to spend the rest of your days in this environment?
Yeah, well, and I mean, you're close, like you trot down to Bergamo, and then you can cruise over to Brescia and hang around, and and all these beautiful places in northern Italy. But yeah, these are stunning wines, and just to put this a couple more steps into context, like I think these are 100-year-old vines in this specific vineyard. So not only is this already in a small place, Valtellina, but it comes from one of like the five
Sorry, Anne. I got distracted.
Best areas. What you'll sometimes see referred to as the Cruise of Valtellina. So Sasella and Grumello and Inferno.
Which kind of always just like had this like Hellmouth kind of like vibe to it. I was always like, why Inferno?
Oh, yeah.
Like it's
like River
Styx.
Like
it's cold to hell or something. It's like such a visceral word, Inferno.
Yeah. And then so this is from one of those five crews, Sasella, but it's from a specific vineyard within Sasella. So I mean, you're basically tasting a Grand Cru wine, if you will, from Valtellina, and from, I think, general consensus, the best producer in Valtellina. So
absolutely. And you'll see in the chat, it's r.pay. Like it's our pay. We say our pay, but like it's one of the weird wine names, label names. It's either put R with a period pay, or it's like it's capitalized, and it's like, why are they shouting R pay? It's very confusing. Alpine everything.
Alpine everything. When I taste that wine, like if you taste that wine and you don't think it's spectacular, you're dead inside. And like, I don't know what to say to you. It is so good.
Oh, so good. I really want to like put more of these like high-end wines in these tastings as every cat and his dog continues to do virtual wine tastings. I need to up the ante a little, and like I created Alpine literally around this wine. Like this is why I just was like, how do I pour this wine? And I was like, Alpine, that's what I'm gonna do. But this is a great expression of Nebbiolo, and it's a great way to know that like Barolo, this is Barolo level, and like this is like $150 a bottle or something like that. But Valtellina Superior, like just Rosso di Valtellina, is around, and it's such a great different expression than Langhe Nebbiolo, and I think you're getting better value for your money than you would if you were buying Langhe Nebbiolo, which who knows where it's from. Like, Langhe Nebbiolo. But Valtellina is such a great expression of Nebbiolo, and I really enjoy sharing it with people because it's super delish.
Yeah, and like to Nick's point, like if you love Barolo and Barbaresco and you're saying, Jesus, I'm getting priced out of here, I can't afford any of these wines, this is a special case. I mean, we're drinking maybe the top wine in the whole area, and it's $150, right? You spend $150 on Barolo, you're not drinking
absolutely not
Monfortino, you're not drinking the top wines. You're drinking a very good wine. Same on the lower scale. If you go to Valtellina, or if you're looking in Alto Piemonte, I think the Gattinara from Travellini is at the LCBO right now. That's probably $32. It's that weird.
It's the weird bottle. The weird bottle.
Apparently, it's like made to fit the winemaker's hand.
Pope's hand. That's the urban legend. I'm going to put a picture on the bottle. You've every single person in the entire world has seen this bottle.
But you know what? It's like, while the bottle shape is weird, and you've probably seen it at the LCBO sometimes, I think it's like $32, $33. And you're like, wow, yeah, like that's a really tasty wine. Like if you like Nebbiolo, you'll like that wine. And yeah, so $33. Thank you, Emily. I mean,
Emily should have been Rachel. That's what I should have done. When Rachel was like running late, I was like, Emily, you're in the chat. This is your job. Engage.
But you don't have, like, $33 gets you nowhere in Piemonte, right? Generally. But when you move up north a little bit, $33 gets you a pretty smart wine. And don't just look at the LCBO. Like, reach out to wine agencies and look for,
wine agencies.
Crema.
We're going to wine shops. We're going to private wine stores, Sam. I wrote you this in a note, I didn't write this in an email, but I said very specifically.
I mean, I did buy wine from your wine shop today. So yes.
You did. It was a wine that you tasted in the last session we had. So thank you so much for spreading your wings.
What can I say? I'm a straight shooter. I tasted that wine, and the last wine coach was like, "This is a great wine. It's there. I'll buy some more of it."
You know why I restocked? I sold out of that wine. The reason I restocked it was the fact that you had said this was my favorite wine in the lineup, and I was like, "Gotta grab on that." Like if Sam Mellington is saying this is the best Syrah he's tasted in the Northern Road, this is the only one I need to restock. And I bought the last 2 cases. And
it was
bought the first bottle of those 2 cases. So
it was the most.
If you could please buy the other 23 bottles, I'd be really happy.
Nick, which of these 5 wines do you have the most of? Let me just tell me before I say which is my favorite.
Good question. No, I've got 2 mags left. I didn't buy a lot of the Sauvignon. I only bought 12 bottles of Sauvignon. I've got actually a lot of the Lagrein, and I'm not mad at that. I'm not really mad at that at all.
And what's that in the shop price?
$36.
32?
38. Sorry, 36. Sorry, $36.
I mean, that's
that's Beaujolais. I mean, it's expensive Beaujolais, but I like it. It's a different form of like easy drinking wine. Everything's. This is so delicious. I'm really happy. I also had cheese corner. We didn't get to around it, but here is my fondue. Yum, yum, yum,
yes. Oh.
Oh my God, it's so fucking good. This is why we do this. I don't care about the wine. I just care about fucking cheese.
I thought you were going to say it's so hot. And I was like, how is it still hot? It must have been sitting next to you for a while.
The cheese is fondue. So if you go to Val you go to any Alpine region, it's all about melted cheese with bread and meats and whatever. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. I can do that. It's pretty easy. Didn't really hard, but the beauty of fondue is that all the 8 different cheeses I have in my fridge from all the cheese corners that I've done in the last sort of 2 months, I just grated them up and threw it all in there.
So
a real melange, but it's so delicious. What cheese did you get? You got some Comté?
So I've got some 24-month Comté, which is so delicious.
It is so good.
But I don't know if you can see this. I also have Speck.
Oh, Speck.
So if you're not familiar with Speck, it's basically prosciutto from Südtirol or Alto Adige, but with the Germanic influence, it gets smoked. So much like they would smoke sausages or other like smoked pork hock, that kind of stuff. So it's basically smoked prosciutto, and it's delicious.
While we kind of like round out, please tell us what your favorite wine was. Sam, what was your favorite one?
I mean, on quality and complexity and depth and excitement, like wine number 5 makes me feel weird and fizzy inside. It's like It's like when you're at the top of a roller coaster. It is so fucking good. But
It's really rare to get like old vintages of wine, and when I do, it's like, let's share this with the world.
yeah.
You know what you know how I hate telling people to sit on wine.
So the wine I'm thinking of, is our Pepe has another wine from Sicela called Stella Retica, I think. It just popped into my head. And I think that's like, it's not free. I think it's like 45 or $50, or maybe it's $60 now. Who knows? But yeah, man, to taste the special kind of top cuvee is outstanding. But
I can still wow you, Sam.
I actually I love wine number one for what it is, especially like if you do have Comté. Like try a sip of wine number one with Comté, or even if you have an inferior Alpine cheese like Emmental or Gruyere, it'll be delicious. And I thought the Sauvignon was like, maybe it was just because it was nice and sunny and warm today, but I found that so Moorish, like so easy to drink.
Yeah, this is a session where like I could have had fondue with every single wine, and like the last sip of my Valtellina and the fondue, like even then it like sang. The wine was just so much more intense, and all the fruit came out of the wine, like the fruit flavors come out of the wine, and that's like rare in that you can easily pair a wine and like a red wine and a cheese, and like I don't know, I can talk on for hours and hours about all of these wines, and I think it's really fun.
I have this much left of that Valtellina from our Pepe.
Did you give it to Emily? No.
Yeah, there's some in the pouches for Emily to try. But I probably won't drink this for another 2 hours, because when I get to a wine that's so pretty like this and I have that much left, I nose it and I'm like, I can't drink it yet. I don't want that to be the last impression I had of that wine, right? And there's very few wines that do that for me, and Nebbiolo does when it's grown in a special place and it's made by special people, and 5 ticks that.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris and Paul were asking about what's April wine coaches. They're in my head, and I want to do cherry, and I want to do a food and wine pairing, and like singular food and wine. So like Syrah, and like from a gastronomic sort of chemistry level, where you taste like a single ingredient and you taste a wine and you like see how they interact. I definitely want to do Jura. I think that's like worth exploring. I've got to find some Jura. And then Bordeaux. I was talking to my SOM team yesterday, and I'm like, how am I going to up the ante after Sachet, Montrachet, and Sake, which is like a big tasting that I did on Saturday. And I was like, I'm going to do what no one expects. I'm going to do third and fourth growth kind of like Bordeaux's level wines that are like 10 years old or something. So I found some delicious Bordeaux today that we're going to explore. But I think that's fun. And then that's as far as I've gotten. But I'm gonna send an email out to everyone tomorrow and tell you what the wine coaches are. But still some fun things to go. And there's some German Riesling. That was the last one I wanted to do. So there's enough fun things. There's so many more wines. There's so much more wine to drink, everyone. Do not worry. I've got lots and lots of wines to show everyone.
If you need someone to hang out with and talk shit with while you drink German Riesling, Papa likes Riesling.
You have to do Bordeaux before you get to do Riesling. No. I am so determined. I'm like, Bordeaux is the last place I look for when I'm like, oh, what wine should I like? What's new wine I should add to the list? I'm like, never think of Bordeaux. But it's time to think about Bordeaux. It's time to be the wholesome son that I should be, and explore regions that Bruce Warner has for years decried, and see what fun, delicious things I can do.
There's no reason.
Like Riesling. I love Riesling too, and We are going to drink so much Riesling in April. I'm so excited. But Sam, thanks for coming. Thanks for hanging out with us. This has been a really special tasting, and like a one that I have definitely learned a lot about, like learning about how Alpine, especially the European Alps, like they can be so far away. These regions can be so far away from each other, but share so many similarities. And it's been super fun. I hope you enjoyed it.
And you get so much cultural diversity in such a small space, right? I mean, if you look at a place like Switzerland, where there's Italian Switzerland and French Switzerland and German Switzerland, the Alps are like that everywhere, right? We were talking about Val d'Aosta, they speak French there first. We were talking about Sud Tyrol, they speak German there first. You know, this isn't bibbidi bobbidi land. So so
don't meatball. There's no Italians in the chat.
No,
they would have told us.
Hopefully, no Italians in the chat. All that to say, I mean, it is such an amazing area to explore, and I mean, unique grape varieties, incredible place, lovely wines.
It's such a fun. This is such a fun tasting. Oh, I loved it so much. I gotta up the ante, and I gotta do some really, really fun tastings. This is super great, and thanks for hanging out. And you know, I don't know. We'll do some Riesling. We'll catch up next month and do some Riesling and have some fun, and with some old, I don't know, JJ Prum or something fun like that.
Oh,
I don't know, tempting, isn't it? Thanks, Sam. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I really appreciate your continued patronage as the weather gets warmer. But I'm still going to do these. I don't care. Like, these are so much fun, and as summer increases and as the restaurant opens, like, I'm only going to have more access. I'm going to only have more access to more delicious wines. So let's just keep tasting wines and, like, I don't know, having fun. And the clown somms that I bring in to hang out with me are, they're wonderful people, and I really want you to get to know them. And I hope that as the world reopens this year, that you'll actually get to meet them face to face. And, without me as an intermediary, Sam's the fucking best somm I've ever met. So
God willing, vaccines and some beautiful weather this summer means we could do like a really fun event at Peter Pan on the patio. And we could just have, a lot of the people that have done Wine Coach with you, and just a cool, fun wine tasting outside with a bunch of people.
I agree. And like, we will do in-person events eventually. But yeah, Zoom is this weird medium that I've just embraced, and it's fun. It's weird. I can, like, I turn off and I just sit on this couch and I turn Netflix on, and I'm like, done. It's my day. But thank you very much, everyone. I love you all. Mwah, mwah. Have a lovely evening. And Sam, Emily, thank you very much for hanging out with me. And see you all next week.